Hmm. Okay. All right. Now.
I can see you.
What? You can see me? Oh, okay. All right. That's cool. All right, good. If I can close that. Jackie, do me a favor.
Yeah.
You can see me, right?
Yep.
All right, send me a chat. Like send me a message.
Hold on, wait a second.
Can you see how to do that?
Yeah.
All right, if you guys have gotten on, hopefully you guys can hear me. And all right, I can see the chat. All right, I'm just figuring out this whole live thing, and I have no idea if 2 people, 3 people, 5 people will be on it this evening, whatever the case might be. But I figure, you know what? Why not put it out there and see what we can do? And you know what? A live mock draft, yeah, it might be a good way to have fun. And whether you're a Texans fan or just a draft fan or whatever the case might be, we'll see what's going on. If you want to send me comments in the chat, I'm kind of doing this. This is the first time I've ever done it through this restream through YouTube. So hopefully it turns out okay. But if you're new, I'm John Harris, footballtakeover.com. And why don't we go live? It's time for the 2023 live NFL mock draft. And if it's just the 2 of you, I don't know. Maybe those 2 are my wife and my daughter out in LA. I don't know. I don't even know if they're paying attention, but here we go. Why not knock this out as best we possibly can? So let's start at the top of the draft with the Carolina Panthers. And I did a lot of work today. Hopefully you see up in the top corner. Yeah, Carolina Panthers logo came up. Okay, so that's good. So maybe I have maybe I do have some idea what's going on. Now, I will admit, for all my Texas fans out there, I did consider a trade at this particular spot. In fact, my very first iteration of this mock draft, I actually traded up to number 1 to ensure that I got Bryce Young. And then I thought more about it. I thought, you know what? To do that, the trade I had come up with was the Texans having to give up number 33. And I just didn't want to do that because I have CJ Stroud that close to Bryce Young. So I thought, you know what? I'll just deal with it with whatever goes on. Carolina Panthers can take their quarterback, and I'll take the quarterback that's remaining because I like both of them that way. Now, I don't know if the Texans will look at it that way, but that's the way I'm going to look at it. So with pick number 1, the Carolina Panthers are going to do what is becoming, I think, more the chalk. I don't know. Today, the Vegas odds said it's even. It's CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. So in my 2023 NFL mock draft, the first pick of the draft for the Carolina Panthers is Bryce Young of Alabama. He goes to the Carolina Panthers. I don't ultimately believe that the Panthers trade up to number 1 thinking it's Bryce, it's Bryce, it's Bryce. I think they went up there just because they wanted to control this particular draft, and they did. Now, they had to give up some to do it, but they weren't going to dictate, or they were going to dictate and not have it dictated to. If they were going to stay at 9, it was going to happen that way. Moving up to 1, yeah, it was rich, but that was pretty much the only way that they were going to be able to do it because Houston wasn't trading out of 2. Arizona at 3, you're getting the third best quarterback if quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3. So you go up to 1, you figure it out. I think they're going to figure it out, and they're going to go with Bryce Young as the quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. So that leads me to number 2, the Houston Texans. Now, I've thought about all the different options that the Texans could have here. Do they like Stroud? Do they not like Stroud? How much do they like Bryce Young? Do they need to trade up to go get Bryce Young? There are a lot of different things that are happening with this particular draft. But I went Bryce Young to the Panthers. I thought about a trade down. I thought about Anthony Richardson here. I think his ceiling is really, really high, and I think it would be really fun to watch NRG Stadium. But in the end, I could not, in good conscience, turn away from CJ Stroud. That is who I have going to the Houston Texans at number 2. I just think that is way too smart. You know, in the draft, sometimes smart isn't the actual way that it's supposed to go. But I think that CJ Stroud is a guy that I have comped to Joe Burrow. And if you would like to see my thoughts on CJ Stroud as you're a Texans fan, click on that QR code link right there. That's the Harris 100. And you can go down. I think it's number 4, CJ Stroud. You can check him out there. But the Houston Texans I know they make me pretty happy with CJ Stroud because I didn't see a really big difference between the two. I think Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, I felt very confident that they were pretty much in the same it was a bit ballpark. They're different. I mean, they're different vehicles, but in the end, I felt like CJ Stroud ends up being the choice at 2 because the Panthers fall in love with Bryce Young. So I don't want to mess around. I know I want to have a quarterback for this organization going forward. So CJ Stroud ends up being the pick at number 2. Now, like I said, I went back and forth about whether I should take Stroud there or whether the Texans would be happy. I didn't worry about that. I just think in the end, you're going to get to a point where you like CJ Stroud. He ends up being the pick at number 2. Now, getting to number 3, this is where it gets kind of crazy. And oh, by the way, if you're a Texans fan, stick around because I'm going to give you pick number 12, pick number 33, and also another pick later on. And you'll see why, because it's all kind of merging together. You'll see what I ended up doing here in just a little bit. But number 3 is where it gets really kind of interesting. Because I asked this question to John McClain on Sports Radio 610 tonight. Could quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4? Well, in my draft, they're going to go 1, 2, 3. But if you're thinking, wait a second, Arizona's at 3. Yeah, Arizona's at 3. So here's how this is going to go down. The Washington Commanders, well, this is my mock draft, so I can do what I want. The Washington Commanders are going to make a deal for Lamar Jackson. So Lamar Jackson is going to the Washington Commanders. The Commanders are giving up a 2023 first, a 2024 first, and a couple of other picks. So Washington makes that move. Okay. So the Ravens now have pick number 16 from Washington. They're going to package 16, the Ravens' 4th-round pick this year, and the acquired Washington pick to send to Arizona to move up to number 3. So in essence, the trade, Baltimore moves to 3, Arizona moves to 16. But Baltimore also keeps pick number 22 for right now. So they've got that. But Lamar Jackson goes to Washington. And so Washington ends up moving out of the first round. So Washington gets Lamar. Baltimore, as a result, moves up to number 3 and still keeps number 22. And the Cardinals reel in 16 overall, Baltimore's 4th rounder, Washington's 1st rounder at 24, and Baltimore's 2nd rounder at 24. So Monty Ossenfort comes out of there looking really, really good, and they need a lot of pieces. So that's the trade that moves Baltimore up to number 3. And at that point, it ends up being, and let me put the Baltimore logos over there, it ends up being Anthony Richardson of the University of Florida going to Baltimore. Now, a couple of things. First of all, Greg Roman no longer there as offensive coordinator. Because if you're thinking, well, wait a second, they can just run that same offense. No, not quite. They brought in Todd Monken from the University of Georgia. He's seen Anthony Richardson. He's seen the good. He's seen the bad. Now, he was focused more on the Florida defense, but he has an idea, having been in the SEC. He's the offensive coordinator there for Baltimore. Baltimore's got to have a high-ceiling guy. Now, they still have Tyler Huntley, so Richardson doesn't have to play right away. He can let Huntley be the guy, and then Richardson can come in at some point and maybe do what Lamar did. Lamar, when he was a rookie in 2018, he came in at the second half of the year and ended up leading Baltimore to the playoffs. So the Baltimore Ravens end up getting to number 3, and at number 3, they end up selecting Anthony Richardson from the University of Florida. So quarterbacks have now gone 1, 2, and 3, and it's the Colts that sit at number 4. And having known Chris Ballard for a long time, I debated whether they would actually go with Will Levis. And then today I found out they had a bunch of people go to he had a private workout. And I just thought Levis is going to be the kind of guy that he wows them with just the way he speaks about the game, throwing the football. When you see him on the hoof, I think they're going to be really excited. So not that I really would like to see the Colts take a quarterback, and I really hope that Will Levis doesn't turn out to be a great quarterback, but I just feel like Indianapolis has to do it. They can't go into the year starting Gardner Minshew and Sam Ehlinger. That's not going to do it in Indianapolis, especially with the quarterback issues they've had. So at number 4, it is the Indianapolis Colts selecting the aforementioned Will Levis. So quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4 in this draft. Shocking, surprising. Will it go that way? Probably not. But when have we ever seen a draft go the way that we thought it was going to go? This doesn't happen that way. So you've got Bryce Young. You can see the ticker down below. You got Bryce Young. Well, actually, I said Houston. It goes the other way around. Carolina ends up with Bryce Young. Houston ends up with C.J. Stroud. Anthony Richardson goes to Baltimore, who has made a trade up. Arizona has traded down, and Washington ends up with Lamar Jackson. And Will Levis goes to the Indianapolis Colts. All right, number 5 ends up being the Seattle Seahawks. I won't spend too much time on this one because the Seahawks, to me, sort of easy. I guess maybe that's the right way of putting it. It's Jalen Carter. And I didn't have to think too long about that because I think Seattle's one of those places where Pete Carroll and his locker room they've absorbed players that have had, some issues in the past. They always tried to find, Josh Gordon on his I don't want to say his last legs, but just, whatever Josh Gordon was able to do, they wanted to bring him along. He always had issues. They felt like they could help him along. It just wasn't going to happen. I think Jalen Carter is definitely a guy that is not a bad guy. I think he's made some mistakes. The Seattle Seahawks, absolutely, without question, they need help. They need help in a big, big way on the defensive line. And so Jalen Carter, to me, makes the most sense. So Jalen Carter is going to go to the Seattle Seahawks, which puts the Detroit Lions on the clock at number 6. And this is where I might get some pushback on this one. Maybe. But I feel like after last year, Aiden Hutchinson did a great job on the edge. They also ended up having James Houston on the edge, who was a kind of a late round find. But I feel like they're still lacking something on the edge. Josh Pascal hasn't really given them everything that they've wanted. So I was going to go edge here. And I think the two next highest rated players I have are Will Anderson Jr. and Tyree Wilson. And just the more I thought about it, the more it made sense right here to go Tyree Wilson of the Detroit Lions going at number 6, and a little bit of an upset that Will Anderson is still on the clock. So let's get to number 7, because at number 7, it's the Las Vegas Raiders. They don't have to trade. They don't have to move. They end up seeing Will Anderson Jr. come out to Las Vegas, and they're happy. Now, they've got Chandler Jones. They got Max Crosby. I don't know how much longer Chandler Jones is going to play, but I can promise you in that division, when you face Patrick Mahomes, you've got to be able to have guys off the edge. You got to have dudes, and Will Anderson Jr. is that dude out in Las Vegas. The Raiders call up about trades. They try and move up. They try and do some things. They don't have to worry about it because the way this draft falls, Will Anderson Jr. falls them at 7 because of the 4 quarterbacks and then Tyree Wilson in a mild upset going to the Detroit Lions. Okay, let's get to number 8. That's the Atlanta Falcons. And I thought about quarterbacks, but obviously quarterbacks are off the board. So the Falcons, they could use help defensively. Well, the 2 big defensive ends are off the board. And they could also use help at corner. And there's going to be a run on corner at some point. And to me, that player that starts the run is Christian Gonzalez from the Atlanta Falcons, or from the Oregon Ducks. A duck going to become a Falcon, I guess, birds of a feather. But anyway, to me, he's CB1. I know a lot of people are like, Devin Witherspoon. Christian Gonzalez is 6'1", 201, smooth, fluid. I think Devin Witherspoon is a car crash waiting to happen. And I think in the NFL, that doesn't always go well. I think Gonzalez is a much more smooth cover corner, and I think he would fit opposite A.J. Terrell. You got Terrell on one side, you got Gonzalez on the other. That's a great way to go for the Atlanta Falcons. So they're going to go corner at that particular spot. We get to number 9, and that is where the formerly number 1 owned pick Chicago Bears are, and they need offensive line. Once they move down to number 9, I start thinking about 2 spots, wide receiver, but then DJ Moore was acquired in trade. And so then you had offensive line. And there's no offensive lineman off the board yet. So you've got Peter Skoronski, you have Paris Johnson Jr., and you've got Broderick Jones. So the 3 highest offensive linemen for me. And I settled on Broderick Jones because I started thinking about Justin Fields and the offense that they run. And they're going to do a lot with movement and want to get a tackle out and get him moving because of some of the things they can do with Justin in the run game. I think they go Broderick Jones from the University of Georgia, which then leads me to the Eagles, because the Eagles, you got to love seeing Broderick Jones. I don't want to say love seeing him off the board, but I think the Eagles love seeing Peter Skoronski on the board, because to me, Peter Skoronski is a guard who can play tackle. And Philadelphia lost Isaac Seumalo. Now, their offensive line is tremendous. Lane Johnson's getting up there in age. Jordan Mailata has been out there for a while. Peter Skoronski can play guard or tackle. He can step in for Seumalo when Lane Johnson hangs it up, or Jordan Mailata moves away, whatever it might be. He can jump in there one of those tackle spots after years of playing guard. So I think Peter Skoronski is the perfect fit for the Philadelphia Eagles at number 11. All right, let's get to the Titans at 11. The Eagles at 10, Titans at 11. And this is going to break my heart. I thought the Titans bring offensive line here. Paris Johnson Jr. still on the board. The offensive line was dreadful. But they went and got Andre Dillard in free agency. They got Daniel Brunskill in free agency. I feel like they've got to have wide receiver help. They've got to have somebody to help Derrick Henry. Quarterbacks are off the board. There's some rumor about them going up to 3. I don't see it. So the Tennessee Titans at that point got to go offensive line, right? No. Wide receiver? Yes. And a top receiver? Oh, boy. Top receiver on my board, 1 pick before the Texans are about to draft again. Jackson Smith and Jigba goes to the Tennessee Titans. Man. Okay. Oh, God. I just can't. That just bothers me a lot. So, but it happens. What are you going to do? He goes there, and now the Texans have to regroup at 12. and they're on the clock at 12. Here's the thing. I've thought for about a month or more that they're moving out of 12. And I think the team that makes the most sense, because I mentioned that run on corners is going to happen. Christian Gonzalez has already come off the board. And there are a lot of people that think Devin Witherspoon may come off the board at 6 even before that. So the Steelers decide, all right, they call Nick Caserio, we want to make a trade. And Nick accepts. So Pittsburgh moves to 12. Now here's the key. Houston moves down to 17, and they get in the process pick number 49. So they'll pick at 33 and 49, and I will have both of those picks in this mock draft a little bit later, obviously, if we're going chronologically. But Pittsburgh moves up to number 12 in the trade. They've got to get a corner. They got to get one of the better corners, and I think Devin Witherspoon is that right guy. So Steelers make the trade. They move up to 12. Texans move down to 17. And with Jackson Smith-Njigba off the board, you still got all the other wide receivers, and you still have all the edge rushers outside of Wilson and Anderson. So you can move down to 17 and still get one of those guys and pick up a mid-second rounder in the process. I think Pittsburgh will be willing to make that deal. It's 5 spots. It's a second rounder, but they get on a lot of teams' boards the guy who's going to be CB1. So draft party, got to stick around a little bit longer because now the Texans have moved down to number 17 from number 12. But again, they get number 49 in the process, that trade. As you can see it on the screen, Pittsburgh moves to 12. Houston gets 17. They also get 49. So the Texans will draft 17, 33, and 49. Keep that in mind. All right. At 13. It's the New York Football Jets. Do we have to say that? I don't know if we have to. They need offensive lineman. Dwayne Brown, left tackle. As much as I love him, he's gotten older. Mekhi Becton, never know what you're going to get with him. I don't think he's played a full season since he's been in the league. They got Max Mitchell on the right side at tackle. I think they got to have tackle. And you could argue the 3 tackles, Paris Johnson Jr., Broderick Jones, Peter Skoronski. I think they're all in the same mix. I think the Jets are going to end up going with Paris Johnson Jr. from out of Ohio State because he's probably the most versatile guy. He can play guard. I've actually thought he's a better guard than he's a tackle, but, go with it. He can play right tackle to start. He can move into guard to start. Either one of those spots. If it doesn't work out at left tackle with Becton, he can move up to left tackle. I think he's got some work to do there. I think he's raw. But the Jets get Paris Johnson Jr. to protect Aaron Rodgers, maybe? I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening there. But it is Paris Johnson Jr. with the New York Jets at number 13. Now, number 14 is the New England Patriots. And there's been a lot of noise around the Patriots, right? Bill Belichick, does he want Mac Jones? Does he not? Is he going to be into quarterback business? Who knows? But one area that they absolutely need players is that wide receiver. And, Quentin Johnston, no. Jordan Addison, no. No, you're racking your brain. I think the guy they'll go with is a guy they spent time with at the East-West Shrine game. He actually flew back with the Patriots and spent the whole next day after East-West with Bill O'Brien. I think the New England Patriots get a combo version of Julian Edelman, Antonio Brown, and the New England Patriots select Zay Flowers from out of Boston College. Now, if you're thinking, wait a second, that's kind of hot. Yeah, Patriots have done some different things, but they look for football players. They look for guys that are all about football, all about ball. Zay Flowers is that. Now, I mentioned Antonio Brown on the field. Off the field is a different story. On the field, very similar. Electric, dynamic, smaller, but he can play inside, outside. I mean, he can do some things on the outside. So Zay Flowers ends up being the pick for the New England Patriots at 14. So keep all that in mind because the Texans are coming up pretty soon here. So now we get to pick 15, and that's the Green Bay Packers. Let's get the G on the screen. And to me, they lost Robert Tonyan. They've got to have pass-catching weapons. They got some young dudes on the outside, but I think they've got to have somebody at tight end. And so I went back and forth because tight end 1 for me is Michael Mayer. But Dalton Kincaid is right there. And I think Dalton Kincaid might be a better fit in Green Bay from Utah. So you got a guy from Utah State and Jordan Love throwing to a guy from Utah and Dalton Kincaid. If Kincaid is healthy now, he's been dealing with a back issue. But for the Green Bay Packers, I'm going to go pick number 15, Dalton Kincaid from the Utah Utes going to the Green Bay Packers. All right, Arizona is now finally on the clock after the trade. They've moved down, they had to wait a while, but it's Monty Ossenfort's first draft. And when a GM is going through his first draft, I kind of feel like, I don't want to say safe is not the word you're looking for, but you got to get a guy that you know you're going to get solid production out of and get it from day one. And you got to have alpha behavior, and hopefully you've got that from Myles Murphy. They need help on the edge. They lost Zach Allen. They obviously lost J.J. Watt. Now, J.J. played more inside for them. They really don't have a much on the outside. And so they go with Myles Murphy here. I considered Lucas Van Ness here. I considered some other players. In fact, maybe one that's coming up next I considered here. But I just felt like Monty Ossenfort would want a relatively sure thing with Myles Murphy of Clemson going at number 16. All right, so your Texans traded from 12 down to 17. And there are a lot of options here. And that's why I traded down to 17, because there are a lot of options at 12. There are a ton of options at 17. Every receiver's on the board except for JSN and Zay Flowers. And I'll tell you this, if Zay Flowers is 17, I'm going to think long and hard about drafting him because I think he's a game changer. The same with JSN. I don't think he would get to 17. But if JSN's not there at 12, I'll move down to 17 because I've got a ton of options. But to me, and I've heard a lot of people talk about this, the edge rusher draft is pretty good. But I feel like the Texans kind of have a type. We've all got a type. And guys that set the bar athletically. Derek Stingley set the bar athletically really high. 4.36 in the 40, size, height, weight, speed. That matters a lot. And so that's why at number 17, and by the way, if you're thinking, and once you hear this, wait, offense, hang on. They're picking at 33 and 49, remember. They've got to have athletic edge players to go with what they have. They have Chase Winovich. They have John Grenard. Jerry Hughes is 35. And they got Derek Rivers. And Derek, unfortunately, has not been able to stay healthy. They've got to help people on the edge. They got to get some help on the edge. And so I went with pound for pound the best athlete in this draft, that being Nolan Smith out of the University of Georgia to play on the outside. Now, he's 238 pounds. Is that too small for a 4-3 defensive end? Maybe. If he is, then he's got to have elite athleticism, and he does. He ran 4.37, 4.38 at 238 pounds. He had a 40-plus inch vertical leap. He is the epitome of athleticism. He missed the last half of the year dealing with a pec injury like Whitney did back in 2017, like JJ had in 2019. He's going to come back from that. To me, Nolan Smith makes a lot of sense at number 17. So stick around because 33 and 49 are coming up in just a little bit. All right, at number 18 is now the Detroit Lions. And 17, 18 go together here because I gave a lot of consideration to the player that Detroit takes at number 18. And I know it's going to sound strange, but I did. And I know people will say, well, wait a second, Texans have Dameon Pierce. They're fine. They don't need running back. And there are a lot of running backs in this draft. Bijan Robinson's a different dude. So I gave it a lot of consideration at 17. But I ended up having to get an edge rusher because it felt like the athleticism of Nolan Smith too much to pass away or turn away from at a premium position. So the Detroit Lions at 17 lost Jamal Williams, and they draft Bijan Robinson. So the Lions come out of there with Tyree Wilson and Bijan Robinson. And like I said earlier, if you want to see scouting reports on them, you can go to you can click on that little QR code up there, Football Takeover, and you can also go to the Harris 100. And you can see I've got links for my scouting reports for both Bijan and all the guys right there, the Harris 100 right there. So definitely check that out when you get a chance. But the Lions go Bijan Robinson. And like I said, I thought long and hard once I moved down to 17 whether Bijan should be that pick. And I just feel like the Texans need a volume of dudes that know what they're doing when they're carrying the football. And that part of me that felt like they needed a priority position in Nolan Smith just made more sense than anything else. So the Lions end up with Bijan Robinson at pick number 18. All right, pick number 19, and this is the one that might get, I don't know, I'm not panned, but there'll be some people that are like, wait a second, what? You went with who? At number 19, Baker Mayfield signed a one-year deal. Kyle Trask has not won them over. There's going to be a competition, apparently. I'm not totally sold that the quarterbacks in Tampa Bay, either one of them, are better than the quarterback that I have them drafting at 19, and that's Hendon Hooker of Tennessee. And again, when it comes to thinking these things through, I thought about, man, would it make sense for the Texans to avoid a quarterback at 2 and maybe highlight Hooker with 17? But I just could not do with CJ Stroud. To me, he's in tier 1 with Bryce Young. I got an opportunity to get him. I'm getting him. But Hendon Hooker, as we talked about on radio tonight, an excellent football player, 25 years old, coming off a torn ACL. But when it comes to passing acumen, I saw more improvement in Hendon Hooker over the last 2 years at Tennessee than I saw in any other quarterback. And he made throws. He made a throw against Pitt in the back of the end zone. That was absolutely superb. Might have been the best throw I've seen from a quarterback all year. He does some things out of the pocket. He can run now. I don't know how the ACL will play into it, but Hendon Hooker is going to Tampa Bay. And if he's got to sit behind Baker for a year, great. He sits behind Baker for a year. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think, have a guy they can build with Hendon Hooker. All right, number 20. Okay, that's back to Seattle. Now, Seattle would consider Hendon Hooker too. But in the end, I felt like Seattle could probably use some athleticism out on the edge. They got Jalen Carter, arguably the best player in this draft. I don't even know it's arguable. But I felt like they could use some athleticism still out of corner. They went and got Tariq Woolen. They've got Kobe Bryant. I feel like they could use some more out there. And maybe what it does is allows them to put Kobe Bryant on the inside. And they put the guy I have going to them, Deonte Banks from Maryland, which probably thinking, wait a second. This dude is one of the best athletes in this entire draft. He ran a 4.3 range from Maryland. He's 6 foot, 195. He's perfect size. He's exactly what the Seahawks look for corners. And they are ready to lock it down with he on one side, Tariq Woolen on the other, and then Kobe Bryant at corner, nickel. They could be really exciting. Deonte Banks goes to the Seattle Seahawks at number 20. All right, it's time for another tight end to come off the board to the LA Chargers. I had Dalton Kincaid going earlier. He's tight end 3 for me. Tight end 1 for me is Michael Mayer. And that's exactly who the San Diego Chargers, I got fined. Dang it, I got fined for this. San Diego Chargers, now the LA Chargers. Either way, Southern California is going to like Michael Mayer at Notre Dame. And I think Justin Herbert having that consistent threat. Look, Gerald Everett has been a really fine pass catcher, but even last year, you could tell there were some issues. The game against Kansas City, he was tired on a drive. He didn't run the route the right way. Herbert threw to a spot where he thought he was going to be. Jalen Watson picked it off 100 yards to the house. And that game against the Chiefs in week 2 or week 3 changed on the spot. I think the Chargers and Justin Herbert need to have a reliable pass-catching tight end, a thick-bodied, really great ball skills tight end in Michael Mayer. Michael Mayer goes 21 to the LA Chargers. At number 22, the Baltimore Ravens are at 22. So they've already picked Anthony Richardson at 3, and now they're at 22. And there's been talk all this offseason about the Ravens needing wide receivers. So Zay Flowers off the board. Jackson Smith-Njigba off the board. I know Texans fans won't like this because they would like to see him down at 33. But it's not going to happen. The Baltimore Ravens select Quentin Johnston, TCU. He keeps all of the purple in his wardrobe. And Quentin Johnston goes number 22 to the Baltimore Ravens. We get to number 23, and we stick with the purple theme, and it's the Minnesota Vikings. And the Vikings, to me, need corners. Patrick Peterson left Minnesota, went to Pittsburgh. I just think that secondary needs a lot of help. So let's give the, speaking of Pittsburgh, former Pittsburgh Steeler Joey Porter Sr.'s son, Joey Porter Jr., goes to the Minnesota Vikings from Penn State. He goes number 23. Now, AFC South, Jacksonville Jaguars on the clock at 24. They lost Juwan Taylor, right tackle. He went to Kansas City. So I feel like they've got to replace him with another SEC player, and a guy that's probably risen more on boards. And during the season, I really liked Darnell Wright. As I watched him initially, I felt like there was something missing. I saw him at the Senior Bowl. I was like, whoa, okay. Then I watched him a couple games more, and I thought, all right, this guy needs to be a first-rounder. And so he is. He goes to Jacksonville at pick number 24. Darnell Wright helps protect Trevor Lawrence, and that offensive line gets a boost in Duval County. All right, pick number 25 is the New York Football Giants. There we go. They need receivers in a bad, bad way. I mean, bad way. So let's give them the next best receiver, number 2, I guess, let's see, number 3 receiver on my board, Jordan Addison, USC, added to Daniel Jones. He's got to have more pass catchers. I know he burned the Texans with a few plays that Darius Slayton made in that game, but he's got to have more options in the passing game. I thought about a tight end here, but they just went out and got a tight end in free agency who, for some reason, escapes my brain right now. Why am I? Oh, Darren Waller. That's right. They got Darren Waller. You add Jordan Addison to Darren Waller and Darius Slayton, and I think you got all something in New York. The Giants go Addison at 25. The Cowboys at 26. This one was hard because I'm not sure that the Cowboys have got really a ton of holes. So I went with actually the highest player left on my board at this particular spot, and that ended up being an undersized but explosive defensive tackle, Calijah Cancey, from out of Pitt. You put him on the inside, you got Micah Parsons on the outside, you got DeMarcus Lawrence still. I think Cancey could wreck shop on the inside. He is as quick as anybody I've seen at that particular position. The Cowboys take Calijah Cancey from out of Pitt. All right, let's get to Buffalo. Offensive linemen aren't sexy, but you better have them. And I think this guy, and I thought about him for the Texans too, because he's got center on his resume in 2021, but he was outstanding at guard. In my Harris 100, he is just outside the first round. But I felt like the Bills, I looked at wide receiver. I actually had a wide receiver first, and I thought, you know what? They need some help up front. So I ended up going with Steve Avila from out of TCU. TCU's got 2 first-rounders, and they'll have plenty of guys drafted. But Steve Avila goes to the Buffalo Bills. Not sexy, but you've got to have guys in the trenches. They added Connor McGovern from the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think that's enough. Don't know how much longer Mitch Morse is going to play at center. So there's a lot of things you can do with Avila from center, guard. I think he's a good fit right here with the Buffalo Bills. Cincinnati Bengals are at number 28, and it's not as if the Bengals have got a lot of holes. This squad is loaded with players. So they're definitely best player available. So best player available at this point is Clemson defensive tackle Bryan Bresee. He joins DJ Reader, BJ Hill, and I think starting off his career in Cincinnati, he doesn't have to start. He can just work his way in. But I think Bryan Bresee's best football is ahead of him. I thought a lot about him at 17 with the Texans, but I just felt like Hassan Ridgeway being added, Sheldon Rankins. Now they're a little bit different. I think Bresee is a little bit more twitchy, up the field kind of guy. These guys are a little bit more stout playing the run. But Bryan Bresee of Clemson goes to Cincinnati at number 28. All right, we're getting near the end of the round, and stick around because I'm going to have both pick 33 and 49 of the Texans, because I know there are a lot of Texans fans out there. So let's get to New Orleans, who's got a pick at number 29. Now, this pick, the genesis of this pick at 29, it used to be the 49ers. Then the 49ers traded it to the Dolphins. The Dolphins then traded it to the Broncos. Then the Broncos traded it to the Saints in the Sean Payton deal. So this pick has made the rounds. When I started looking at the depth chart for the New Orleans Saints, immediately tight end. They need a tight end. Derek Carr needs to have somebody he can throw the ball to, and I love Luke Musgrave. Now, Luke Musgrave, Darnell Washington from out of Georgia, to me, they're both freakazoid athletes. So I went back and forth on this one, but I eventually, because I love Musgrave and his speed is unbelievable for a guy his size, and I saw it at the Senior Bowl. So I ended up falling in love with Luke Musgrave. I fell in love with him last spring. So Luke Musgrave goes here to the New Orleans Saints, and Darnell Washington stays on the board. All right, let's get to Philly at 30. And again, Philly can kind of do what it wants. They really don't have a ton of holes. But secondary-wise, they did lose a couple of safeties. One in particular, Marcus Epps going to the Raiders, I believe. And then Chauncey Gardner-Johnson kind of overplayed his hand. So I think they need some help in the defensive backfield. Perfect. Because the next highest rated player on my board is the perfect fit. He can play corner. He can play nickel. He can play safety. I think you can play Brian Branch from Alabama in a number of spots. And Philadelphia walking out of this draft with both Peter Skoronski at 10 and then Brian Branch at 30 is an absolute win all day long for the Philadelphia Eagles. So congratulations to Howie Roseman and what they're doing in Philadelphia. All right, last pick of the first round is the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs lost Orlando Brown and went to the Cincinnati Bengals. They lost Andrew Wiley, who went to the Washington Commanders. They did bring in Juwan Taylor, and it looks like Juwan is going to end up playing left tackle. They could also keep him at right tackle and then go with this pick right here at number 31, and that is Anton Harrison, offensive lineman for Oklahoma. And I will be brutally honest, I didn't love Anton Harrison last spring. I did. The fact I kept him out of my spring summer version of Harris 100. I just, man, I could see it, but it isn't there yet. 2022, it got there. No doubt about it. So Anton Harrison ends up being the pick right here against Kansas City. I thought his game against Felix Anudike-Uzomah from Kansas State was the game that put me over the top. He didn't dominate him, but pretty darn close. And so that was the one that really got me thinking, okay, he could get up into the first round, Anton Harrison. Okay, so that gets me to the second round, and I'm not going to go through every pick in the second round because I know that more people are here to talk about the Texans. So let's get to the Texans picks, and let's go to pick number 33. And if you remember, we went with C.J. Stroud at number 2, traded down from 12 to 17, and picked up number 49, and we're going to get that pick too. So you have 2, 17, 33, 49. 4 picks in the top 50. That's kind of nice. So we've already gone with C.J. Stroud at 2. We went edge rusher Nolan Smith, arguably the best athlete in this draft, at number 17. Now we got to help the offense. And the offense with both 33 and 49, the key is speed. And I'm a little surprised that he got all the way to 33, but just the way that this thing played out, and that's the way it happens with mock drafts. The Houston Texans select Jalin Hyatt from out of Tennessee. And you start thinking about, man, you put Jalin Hyatt next to Nico, next to Robert Woods, next to Noah Brown, got John Mechie, who essentially is a rookie this year. You start having something. And Jalin Hyatt, look, my comp for Jalin Hyatt is Will Fuller. Well, you remember Will Fuller from a while back, right? Will Fuller, he could fly. Jalin Hyatt didn't run quite as fast as Will Fuller at the combine, but they had that same speed. Like when you watch Jalin Hyatt, you're thinking, boy, there's some fast dudes out on the field, and he's running away from them. So I'd love seeing him at 33. Jalin Hyatt goes to the Houston Texans. All right, let's go to pick 49 and the last pick that we'll do, and then I'll take a look at some of the chats in the comments. I'm sorry I haven't been able to do that, but I'm trying to focus on my stuff. So let's do that, and then I'll get to some of the questions and thoughts that we've got there in the chat. And if you want them, hit me up, and we'll talk about them. But at pick number 49, now keep in mind, 49 is not right now on the board, but I moved down from 12 to 17, trading with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh gave us in that trade pick number 49. That is midway through the second round, I guess. And with that, again, what I said, the thought of speed. Speed is the key. Dameon Pierce is one heck of a running back. There's no question about that. And we saw Dameon with some juice. But I want to put somebody in the backfield that not only can be in the backfield, can play him in the slot. You can play him together with Dameon. You can do some different things. And I actually, when you see him pop up on the board, you'll see Weapon X next to his name. And that's Jahmyr Gibbs from out of Alabama. He ran into 4.3 range. So I've just added with 33 and 49, I've added Jalin Hyatt, runs in a 4.4, low, high 4.3 area. Jahmyr Gibbs, who ran in the 4.3 area. I've given that to C.J. Stroud. And now it's time to amp up NRG Stadium and get that thing rolling. So the athleticism, and that's been the key. That was kind of my thought this whole mock draft was there's got to be an increased level of speed and athleticism on both sides of the ball. Obviously, the quarterback, CJ can do some things running, but it's more about what he can do throwing the football. But Nolan Smith, Jalin Hyatt, Jahmyr Gibbs, they all ran in the 4.3 range. They all can run in the 4.3 range. They're athletic specimens. Now you start amping up the team speed on this roster, and you can see what it's going to be, hopefully, in due time. That is your mock draft for tonight. All right. Let's get to a few of these comments. Noah says, please get A-Chain. I did think about Devon A-Chain. He was definitely somebody I thought about for sure. But I just felt like Gibbs might give me a little bit more. He's a little bit bigger, a little bit thicker. My comp for Jahmyr Gibbs was Jamal Charles. And so I felt like, would I like Jamal Charles in my offense? Yeah, I think I would. So that's the way I went. That's the way I went with it. This is from Juan, the True Texan. He says, as long as he doesn't get as injured as Fuller, that'd be great. Yeah, he's talking about Jalen Hyatt. And here's the thing about Will Fuller and, of course, Jalen Hyatt. When Will was at Notre Dame, I don't remember him missing a game. Like, I don't think he missed a game. And it just so happened his body broke down. His hamstrings broke down. And he just never could get himself healthy. And you're right. I do worry about that with dudes that can absolutely fly. That are just, twitched up and, nothing but a human muscle. So, yeah, I do worry about that a little bit. But I got to think Jalen Hyatt, Will Fuller are a little bit different. And hopefully they'll be different. But, yeah, Hyatt would be if he's Fuller 2.0, but a healthy Fuller 2.0. I mean, I look at it this way with Fuller. In 2018, if Will Fuller had stayed healthy, in 2018, I think the Texans, that was the year they could have won the Super. That's the year they could have won a championship, because I think they would have been better than New England, even though New England beat them at the end of the year. I think in the playoffs, I think they could have gotten New England, because I don't think New England would have been able to run the ball like they were able to against Kansas City. And you would have Fuller and Hop and a healthy Deshaun. But you didn't have in that playoff game against the Colts, you didn't have Fuller. And then Hop was not healthy in that game, especially in the second half. So you add Jalen Hyatt to this mix. And if he's Fuller 2.0, but he's healthy, that's definitely a big one. Noah says that would be a great first round for a team already built like that. Yeah, that would it would be a great first round. You end up with, if you walk out of there Thursday night, and I'll be doing a draft show at Miller Outdoor Theater. So if you're out there, definitely come say hey or wave to me if I'm talking on the mics. If you walk out of there that night and you're like, the Texans got CJ Stroud at 2, Nolan Smith at 17, and they picked up a second rounder at number 49. That's a pretty darn good draft. That's a really, really good draft. Now, the question becomes at 2, if the Texans don't like CJ for whatever reason, and you walk out of there with Will Anderson Jr. and I don't know, another player at 17, maybe you get the receiver at that point. I know you wonder what we're going to do at quarterback. I would be wondering too. So it gets a little dicey there, but I just feel like Stroud is, right there with Bryce. If Carolina goes Bryce, I go CJ. If Carolina goes CJ, I go Bryce. And I think that would end up doing it. So to recap it, for Texans fans, stayed at 2, CJ Stroud. I moved down from 12 to 17. I picked up a Steelers mid-second rounder, and at 17, it took Nolan Smith from out of Georgia. Then at 33, second pick of the second round, Jalen Hyatt was still on the board, so we added some team speed to the wide receiver core. And then at 49, with that pick I got from the Steelers, I added Jahmyr Gibbs from out of Alabama to the mix. And I think it was Noah who said, yeah, A-Chain. A-Chain, if Gibbs is off the board, I would absolutely think of A-Chain at that point too. You just have to amp up the team speed on this roster going forward. It's the first time I hope. I know we didn't have a big viewership, but it's doing it for the first time. But I really appreciate you guys for being here. If you again want to, go to footballtakeover.com, right there up in the corner. I don't know if my finger can get up there. I don't know how the camera. There it is. You hit that QR code there. I'll take you to Football Takeover. You can see an old mock draft. You can see all my Harris 100. You can see scouting reports, all kinds of stuff there. If you want to go straight to the Harris 100, just click that QR code right there, have that loaded up, and you can read all my write-ups for all of the prospects in this particular draft. I appreciate you guys for being here. I'll try and do this a little bit more, but y'all have a great night. We'll talk to you again soon. I always say go Texans. I guess I can do that even though I'm with Football Takeover right now, but yeah, why not? Go Texans. Let's hope the draft goes that way. See you guys next time. Thank you.